How one black man created the $10 million Jheri Curl. A poor black man from a small town in Alabama who once picked cotton, no college education, built a $10 million hair empire. But how? This is his story. And yet most people have never even heard of him before. You see, when most people remember the Jheri Curl, they think of Just Let Your Soul Glow from the movie Coming to America. Even Michael Jackson wore the curl in the 80s. This hairstyle was everywhere from aunties to pop stars, leaving pillows wet but hair soft and curly. It was truly a game changer to make black hair softer and easier to manage. You could hear echoes of Stevie Wonder singing "Looking Back on When I Was a Little Nappy-Headed Boy" from his hit song "I Wish" playing on the radio. The story starts with an 18-year-old sharecropper leaving Alabama on a long bus ride west. He carried one extra shirt, one small bag, cold fried chicken, and a pound cake packed for the road. That was his send-off to barber school in San Diego. There were no investors, no student loan for him, no safety net. Just his father's hard-earned money. His dad had saved up by picking cotton in the Alabama heat. All he had was skill and gumption. That young man was named Willie Lee Morrow. Around his California Curl company, people used to tell the story of his father, Holly, a sharecropper, who reportedly ran bootleg whiskey on the side. Between cotton fields and underground hustle, he scraped together enough money to send his eldest son to barber college. That move alone was a gamble. The family could have used that money for something else. San Diego was not exactly friendly territory for ambitious black businessmen at the time. Some even called it the Mississippi of the West, shaped by Southern migration, but still saturated with racial barriers that did not always announce themselves out loud. But seasoned black people from the South were all too aware. When Morrow entered barber college, instructors focused almost entirely on Caucasian hair care. Techniques regarding black hair care were non-existent. He absorbed what he could, experimented, observed. By 1965, he had gathered enough knowledge to write and self-publish The Principles of Cutting and Styling Negro Hair, a textbook created because the industry refused to create one. He saw problems other people ignored. In the early 1960s, a neighbor returned from a trip to Africa with a hand-carved wooden comb. Dr. Morrow examined it closely. At that time, there was not a single comb on the American market designed specifically for black hair. People improvised. Angel food cake cutters were used instead to part hair. So Morrow began carving wooden combs in the back of his shop, modeling them after the African design. That instinct would later help lead to what became known as the Afro pick. That's right, Morrow invented the Afro pick, which came out in 1972. He hand-carved thousands with his own hands. While working as a barber for the military, he is also credited with helping pioneer the fade haircut. Without Dr. Morrow, black men would have never even worn the fade hairstyle. The fade would go on to evolve into lineups and tapers. Dr. Morrow was truly a pioneer. Even the government called for his help to deal with black hair. To them, it was considered unruly and difficult. Willie would become a well-traveled man who had been all over the world, places like Italy and Vietnam. The little boy who grew up picking cotton was living his wildest dreams. He also developed one of the first blow-dryer comb attachments, making straightening and shaping textured hair more efficient. He was inventing in real time and rarely writing anything down. Much of what he created lived first in his hands, not on paper. Then came 1975. Morrow perfected what he initially called tomorrow's curl, a permanent wave process designed specifically for naturally curly hair. In 1977, it was renamed the California Curl. On the East Coast, many called the look the wet look. On the West Coast, it was the California Curl. And for a moment, it made Willie Morrow king. The product gently relaxed tightly coiled hair into defined curls. It exploded. His company grew rapidly. At one point, he was generating roughly $10 million a year. He also pioneered the blowout, which helped make black hair easier to comb. And yet, no major unsecured line of credit from local banks. According to accounts at the time, San Diego's financial community showed hesitation. There was skepticism, a sense of covert disbelief. How could this black man build a multi-million-dollar operation without leaning on traditional banking relationships? Why was he not dependent? Racist banking practices were not always loud. Sometimes they showed up as polite refusals, as hesitation, as endless scrutiny.
Absolutely not.
Morrow's company operated largely on cash flow, when by all reasonable standards, it should have qualified for substantial credit backing. Beauty supply giants soon flooded the market with their own permanent wave systems aimed at black consumers, capitalizing on the demand he had already proven existed. Larger manufacturers had national distribution. They had shelf space. They had the spending power. They had access to capital that his company was repeatedly denied. And then something else happened. The name shifted. While Morrow's California Curl was gaining traction, another label began circulating more aggressively in the national marketplace, the Jheri Curl, associated with Jheri Redding. You see, when black people attempted to use the early Jheri Curl products, many found they were not formulated with their texture in mind. Willie had foolishly told them everything he knew, unwittingly giving his idea away for free. His product, California Curl, came out in 1971, proving he was first with this curl system. The Jheri Curl brand would later be dated to 1978. Willie was so forward-thinking, he used words like activator and moisturizer on his products for his wet curl look. And that same language would later appear on corporate-produced versions as well. Again, not receiving credit. By the late 1970s and into the 1980s, corporate-backed brands such as Soft Sheen Products and Luster Products were mass-producing curl activators and maintenance systems under the Jheri Curl name. That name stuck. National advertising campaigns pushed it. Retail chains stocked it. Distributors prioritized it. By the time the style reached full cultural saturation in the 1980s, worn by entertainers, athletes, and everyday consumers, Jheri Curl became the umbrella term. And this is where the erasure began. What had begun in San Diego as Morrow's California Curl gradually blended into a broader commercial identity. The style became synonymous with the Jheri Curl name, even though Morrow's earlier system was the foundation. He was the pioneer of the cold wave curl. When corporations step in with more money and access, they eclipsed Morrow's brand. Advertisements shaped the identity. Morrow's firm, operating largely from cash flow instead of major lines of credit, could not match the distribution muscle of companies backed by stronger banking relationships and national infrastructure. While he had innovation and early momentum, others had the capital to standardize, package, and broadcast. Over time, the Jheri Curl label became the most recognized version of the story. And once a name dominates the market, it often assumes authorship in the public imagination. It is not lost upon Scope News that this pattern feels familiar and systemic. A black innovator builds the prototype, proves the market, carries the early risk, operates without major institutional backing. Then larger companies, often with white executives, stronger capital access, and national infrastructure, enter the space, amplify the branding, and become the public face. The originator remains in the background while the commercial version becomes the headline. Willie Morrow had created a billion-dollar industry, yet was forgotten and erased. He was the Little Richard of the curl world. This has happened across industries, from hair care to agriculture, from mechanical inventions to beauty formulations. The face remembered is not always the face that first carved the tool, mixed the formula, or tested the technique in the back of a small shop. In the case of the curl system that reshaped 1980s black aesthetics, Willie Morrow's California Curl helped ignite the movement. Yet the name history most commonly repeats is tied to companies with larger manufacturing capacity and stronger national distribution. That does not erase the role of other chemists and manufacturers, but it complicates the simplified narrative. Morrow was generating millions annually. He had built his company without leaning on major banks. The big companies were watching Willie. He was a tough man who had naysayers and secret admirers. Some folks were against the curl look, calling it a form of self-hate. But Dr. Morrow did not let any of this get him down. And even still, when the broader culture tells the story of the Jheri Curl era, his name is often missing from the first paragraph. Willie Morrow never abandoned his Alabama roots. Even after decades on the West Coast, the Southern drawl remained. He carried the South with him all the way to the West Coast. He proved that pedigree does not determine outcome. He did not inherit wealth. He did not graduate from an elite institution. He built with observation, experimentation, and relentless determination. From cotton fields to comb design, from hand-carved picks to multi-million-dollar curl systems. And yet, despite underwhelming barber school lessons, he still went on to self-publish textbooks that filled industry gaps. He chose to fight racism with economics, never letting anyone get in his way. He leaves behind family, legacy, and a blueprint that too few people study. A black man who once picked cotton created an empire, and even while making $10 million a year, he still had to fight for access to basic financial respect. That is, American business history and foundational. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. Primary historical reporting referenced includes the October 29, 1981 feature article, It's Curly at the Top, published by the San Diego Reader, archival coverage of Willie Lee Morrow and the California Curl Company, documented publication records for the principles of cutting and styling Negro hair, and historical accounts of the rise of the Jheri Curl industry and associated brands such as Soft Sheen Products and Luster Products during the late 1970s and 1980s. Cultural references cited include the 1988 film Coming to America and Music by Stevie Wonder. Legal disclaimer: this content is provided for educational, informational, and commentary purposes only. It is not intended to defame, disparage, or misrepresent any individual, company, or brand mentioned. Historical interpretations are based on publicly available sources, archival reporting, and cultural documentation. Business timelines and product developments are presented to the best of available historical knowledge, but readers are encouraged to conduct independent research and consult primary documentation for further verification. All cultural commentary reflects journalistic analysis. Viewer discretion is advised.